In this video, we're going to set up the attack for our skeleton to make it so that he can actually hit our player and deal damage. Now, we have a script called attack, and it's inside our player folder right now. Let's look at this script real quickly. And just a brief view of it in the inspector here, you can see here that nothing is player specific. We're looking for the iDamageable contract, our interface, and if it has one, it's just going to call the damage method. That's it. There's nothing else in here that says, hey, I'm related to the player or I'm specific to an enemy. So we can actually use this for all of our enemies and players. So let's go ahead and take this folder or this script and drag it into the scripts folder. It doesn't need to be in the player folder specifically because it's a dual script. It's a multi-purpose script. So let's go ahead now, and if we look at our hitbox for the player, look at how we applied this. All we had to do was simply add that script and it took over on its own. So we're going to select our hitbox for the skeleton enemy and add the attack script. If we save our scene and we test this out, it's not going to work right away. And that's because our player is not implementing the iDamageable contract. So we're going to need to set that up. So if we select our player, we have our player script and our player animation script. If you hop into our player, we want to tell him, hey, you are now damageable by enemies. So we need to implement that contract. So let Visual Studios load up here. Once that's loaded, we can then go ahead and say player is going to inherit from mono behavior, so we can add it to game objects, and we're also going to implement, by adding a comma, the iDamageable contract. By saving this, it's already going to give us some errors, and if you remember, that's because we're not fulfilling the contract details. We need a health property and a damage method. So let's open this up. I have two options. I can right click this, go to quick actions and refactoring, and I can implement the interface, which is going to tell me I need a public int health as well as my public void damage, or I can simply come down here and do it myself. So let's do that. So we're going to say public int health property, and we can make an auto property just with some get and sets. And then we need our method for damage. So we'll go ahead and put that right at the bottom down here. So public void damage. And let's just have a debug.log get print message that says, hey, my damage function was called on the player, because we don't have any UI elements or health working for our player just yet. So debug.log, we'll say player damage called. All right, save that. So let's head back into Unity. And now, whatever our hitbox on the enemy collides with, it's going to check if it has a iDamageable contract or interface, and if it does, it's going to call the damage method. And then that damage method will be handled however that object wants it to be. So let's go ahead, save our scene, run the game, and let's have our player attack our enemy. So here we go. We're going to attack. And there you go. He's attacking me. And you can see here that if I pause it, I did see player damage get called. And here, let's go ahead and turn off some of these logs. We no longer need these. Just comment them out. Let's save this. Let's run the game again. All right, let's hop back over here. Let's attack. And you'll see here that as he hits me, it does print out player damage. And there you go. So I am now being attacked by this enemy and we're registering damage. And what we can do now is we can use that method inside our player to communicate with our UI manager later on and say, hey, subtract some health, place some hit response animations, and so forth. So that wraps up the attack animation and everything for our skeleton. And the next set of videos, we're going to set up our spider and moss giants. So I'll see you guys then.